On this episode of In the Gun, the Mountaineers head to Florida for a clash with the UCF Knights. We'll preview all that and more on this edition of ITG.
Caution, this podcast contains bad jokes, optimism, and a healthy disdain for Pat Narduzzi. Watching it may increase your actual knowledge of actual football.
ITG.
All the pieces are in place for us to have a chance to win it all.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have.
There's Owen Schmitt in the building.
Like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines.
So where's he in? He in there, Jed Drenning?
I'm not much of an athlete.
The thing that's non-negotiable is playing hard and playing tough.
And Wesley, Valen, Uhler. You are in the gun.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 289 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I am Wes Uhler, as always, with the best teammates in the business. We got the signal caller, Jed Drenning, and joining us here momentarily after he completes his daddy duties for the evening, it'll be the barbecuing, beer trucking, big Owen Schmitt. And as always, we have some people to thank here as we get started at BetOnline. The game starts here for being a presenting sponsor of In the Gun. A big shout out to Toothman Ford, JR, everybody there at Team Toothman. If you don't know by now, cars cost less in Grafton. A big thank you to our guy Rick Lewis and everyone at Fortis for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. You got to visit fortis.us.com. And we love the good people at Johnston Equipment. They're going to be joining the Peach Lot party here in a couple of weeks. Excited to meet all them and put some faces to the names. Make sure you're checking out Johnston Equipment, Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. You can also find them online. Johnston, that's Johnston with a T, JohnstonEQ.com. And to our newest friends, we've been having a lot of fun with everybody at the Book Exchange. We got some more fun stuff coming down the pipeline. Our ongoing throwback helmet, 1965 throwback helmet question that we will continue as we will give away that throwback helmet before this football season is over, or at the conclusion of this football season, I should say. Get all your Mountaineer gear and apparel at the Book Exchange. They're the locally owned and operated retailer with more than 90 years of selling everything you need for game day and everything else you need to show you're the ultimate WVU fan. You can shop at their two locations, downtown Morgantown or on Evansdale, of course, right there on Pattison Drive. Or you can always shop online at bookexchangewv.com. Whether in-store or online, make sure you're using the promo code INTHEGUN20 for 20% off on the ITG gang. That's right, in-store, tell the cashier, or just online when you get to checkout with the discount code INTheGun20, pardon me. And you will get 20% off on all the stuff at the Book Exchange. Hey, Jed, we got the Coal Rush game was just announced here this week, Monday night, as you and I record this. It was announced Monday, 6 p.m. kickoff for the next home game against TCU, and that will be a Coal Rush under the lights. So if you need any of your Coal Rush gear, you know, any black WVU merchandise or any of the official Coal Rush apparel, all that good stuff, great time to be using our discount code INTHEGUN20 with our good friends at the Book Exchange. A lot happening, Jed, that we have to get into. But first, it is October. It is starting to get colder out. It is starting to get darker early outside. But I think one of the most important things of October and something that certainly has a near and dear cause to you and your family is that it's our yearly reminder here on the show. This is the 4th October that we've been doing this. It'll be the 4th October that we take 60 seconds here just to talk about Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And the organization and the awareness behind something so important as this.
I don't say much. I typically apologize for hopping up on my soapbox, but this is the one time I probably won't apologize. But I like the fact that October creates awareness. Look, the truth of the matter is the reason breast cancer draws so much attention is because it impacts so many people. The volume of people that it impacts is greater than most other cancers. But that doesn't mean that October is not also to talk about other cancers and other screening opportunities. So I like the fact that an initiative like this gets people talking. And if you get people talking, maybe that means you do a risk assessment with your doctor. Maybe that means that you talk about, are you due for a mammogram? What kind of risk is attached to you, family history or not? My wife had no family history when she was diagnosed. The unfortunate reality of it is it impacts more people now than maybe ever. We lost a young mother that was a friend of ours earlier this year, tragically, to this terrible disease, to breast cancer. So that's all I would say is, be active in the conversations that you have with your loved ones. Reach out if somebody might be a candidate. Say, hey, are you due for a mammogram? Are you of age? What's your risk stratification? Have you talked to your doctor about this? And for that matter, do the same thing with other cancers. It doesn't have to be confined to, just because it's pink, to breast cancer. I like the fact that it initiates other conversations about other cancers at large. And we're forging a lot of inroads. We're making a tremendous amount of progress. And in large measure, it's because people have interest. Because there is a lot of research and development being done. There are a lot of finances or resources being pushed towards it. So that's all I wanted to say. It was our quick annual reminder. I got my pink on, I got my ribbon on, but yeah, that's what October is all about. I love to see it in the games when they wear the pink trim and the various uniforms at just about every level of football and sports. So that's really what it's about. It's not about jamming anything down your throat or getting preachy. Just, hey, start conversations. Oh, that's right. I do have a cousin Sally. Is she of age? I don't know what the age might be. So let me check and see if she's talked to her doctor. And screening saves lives, education saves lives. You don't know if you're predisposed to something. If you haven't had genetic testing done, that's a good idea to have that done as well. So that's all I would say about that. But October, that's the least we can do is initiate some of those conversations, be an active part of the community when we do so.
Absolutely. Very well stated by you, as always. Jed, I am not the first person to say this. Not even this year in 2025 alone. There's not much that we're completely united behind as a country and a people anymore. But I think our hatred and disdain of cancer and needing to raise awareness, like you said, at every level across the board is and certainly should be one of those things that brings us all together, that unites us all, that affects us all in some way, whether it's you, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, a loved one, whatever the case may be. So very well said by you. And I always love when you remind us this time of year that we need to just talk about this for a few minutes to get an episode going. Well said by you, as always. Jed, not much that unites us as a country. One of the things, other than the hatred and disdain of cancer, that might was kind of a hatred and disdain of the head coach of Penn State University football. Oh, man, you see how I transition that one there, baby. Yeah, now we're talking. Although James Franklin is no longer the head coach of Pennsylvania State University football, as he was relieved of his duties after 3 straight losses. One of them, okay, in double overtime to Oregon, but the other 2 to UCLA and Northwestern in embarrassing, really bad. I think the first time that a ranked team, I forget exactly what the statistic was, but that a team that was ranked inside the top 10 at some point like that lost by 20 when they were a 20-plus point favorite in back-to-back weeks. But I also don't think many of us saw this happening at this point as well, too, despite the back-to-back embarrassing, disappointing losses for the Penn State football program. But Jed, kind of the news that has sent shockwaves around college football this week, with a $49-ish million buyout, James Franklin is officially out at Penn State.
Minutes ago, they were unbeaten. They were in the
Crazy.
top 5, and they were winning by a touchdown in overtime against Oregon, right? That was
Crazy.
just, you blink. And that's how fast this has happened. But the old adage of don't let one loss turn into 2 losses, well, they let it turn into 3 losses, which cost him his job ultimately. And the truth of the matter is, I think this fosters a larger conversation that we'll probably have in the off season for a different day. But it's interesting what's at play right now. I mean, one of the things that came out after James Franklin, because the big talk has been the buyout. He has a $49 million buyout. Now, there is offset language in that contract. What that means for those listening who don't know, he's compelled to go out and try and find another job, either as a coach
Which is
or
kind
in
of just
media.
funny when you think
Okay,
about it.
it is, but it's common for these contracts, especially with buyouts of that significance, to hold that kind of language. Okay, now I'm not sure how you would ever enforce that. It's never really come to that, but that's just
Right.
kind of the tacit understanding. But what it did was it prompted these lists being published of like the biggest buyouts in the country. And it blows your mind just how large some of these are. Now, if you ask yourself, how did it get to the point where you get paid $49 million to not coach? Or Jimbo made $75 million to not
I was going to
coach.
say, yeah.
I think at FSU, isn't the buyout at Florida State $58 million or something crazy on that list? It was
It's
higher
big.
than Franklin's.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's a bunch of chunky buyouts out there. Okay. Well, this started a number of years ago when the agents were saying, all right, we've driven the market to just about its ceiling, 10 million a year, 12 million a year. Okay, we can't really at this juncture push that market ceiling much higher. So what else can we do to expand the market in the interests of our clients, the coaches? Well, how about we guarantee X amount if they're fired? And that's where all these things started. And once one school said yes, then that means the next suitor had to say yes, because they're all lining up to try and outbid one another for the services of whoever's in demand, whatever shiny new object is in demand. That's how this came about. But it came about during a time, Wes, and this is why this is interesting. And there's been some chatter about this in the football industry, the college football industry. It all started at a time when really the only path you had to directly improving your football program as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, was to hire a guy who would spearhead that effort. And whether it's through X's and O's and it's through special scheme or whether it's through motivation, and ultimately he, of course, would have a hand in also improving the talent pool of your program through recruiting, old school recruiting. Yes, there were a couple dollars slid under the table. We all know that pre-NIL. But what I'm saying is back in those days, that's what carried the day. You weren't outright in an open market paying the players. You were only outright in an open market paying the coaches. So it served you well and it was in your best interest to hire the biggest, most valuable coach that you could. Nick Saban at Alabama, for example. Look at the impact the hiring of Nick Saban had on Alabama and the level of talent that he helped bring into Alabama for the next 15 years. It completely changed the entire dynamic of a place that seemed impossible to change beyond what it already had with its previous football success. Well, he reinvented the success and took it to whole new levels. That was back then. But now we're in NIL level. And here's my question, Wes, and this is why I think we're going to see some change at some point. I don't know. I hate to attach timelines to these things, but as we lean more and more into a pro model, that's what we keep hearing at every turn. We want to be more NFL like. They have it figured out. Well, the cracks between the keys and the issues that we stumble over are the areas that we're not yet NFL like. We're kind of pro like. We've talked about it before. We're half-assing this, and we want to full-ass it, right? It's like don't
That's right.
half-ass things, whole-ass it, right?
That's right.
So the issues that we encounter are we're not all in on this. So, for instance, look at it like this. Look at the model that's been implemented by Texas Tech, who, in my estimation, might be one of the 5 best teams in the country right now. If you ask 10 college football fans, how many of them could tell you who Texas Tech's head coach is?
Half.
You and I know for different reasons. This is what we do.
That's
right?
I mean that's what I mean. Like if you were if you're a fan
Yeah.
of the Big 12, probably like even if you're if you live in like if you're a Texas or an A&M fan, you might know because they're in your state and but like not a ton.
I don't want to discredit Joey McGuire and the job that he's doing,
But I know
because
what
to
you mean.
manage
Like
those types of egos and that kind of locker room, you don't just show up and that gets done by itself. It takes effort and it takes a certain personality to be able to handle all that, all right, and superintend all that and bring those crazy different personalities and types of kids with different backgrounds together to make it work, especially in the span of an off season or two, and you're so active in the portal. But I don't think people are looking at Texas Tech being 6-0 and blowing through all their competition saying, wow, that Joey McGuire is really out there out coaching everybody. No, what they're looking at is that front seven is nasty because it's the best front seven money can buy. What do they have? The second highest paid roster in all of college football, counting the Big Ten and the SEC?
I think so,
They're playing like it. They're absolutely playing like it. Now, the reality of it is they still have to go out and take care of of business. I mean, they might go out to Arizona State this weekend, and if they don't play well, face a ticked-off Arizona State team coming off a blowout loss. If Sam Levitt's back, watch out, that Arizona State team's going to be dangerous in that setting, looking for a rebound win. So they still have to take care of business. But the truth of the matter is, they're clearly the most talented team in the Big 12 Conference. So if they show up and handle their business, it's going to be very tough for somebody to beat them. They're going to almost have to contribute to their own demise if they're going to lose a football game or two down the stretch, which they still may. They still may. But that's where we're at. They did that through the open market, through the portal. Cody Campbell's actively involved, and he doesn't hide about it, right? So they went out and they sought the best players money could buy, because those are the rules we're now playing by. In the old college football 1.0, if you wanted to build your program, the only way to do it was hire the Nick Saban or whoever, Urban Meyer, whoever it might be, from a coaching standpoint, to reinvigorate, light fire onto your program, get the talent level souped up through recruiting. Now that's not necessarily as much the case. I mean, I would need to look and see what Joey McGuire's salary is, but I'll promise you it's not the top 10 in the country. It's not the top 15 in the country. What they instead did was they took that money and they paid for players. Is that the wave of the future? So as you're looking at Penn State, they're about to pay James Franklin theoretically $49 million not to coach. Just imagine if instead you came to James Franklin, and I'm not saying this could have happened or it should have happened. I'm just saying it's an interesting conversation piece as to where this might move with how this market is taking shape. In the NFL, head coaches don't make more money in their contract than the premier players in the roster they coach. The top 4 or 5 players on every NFL team make more than their head coach, at least that many, right? At least that many.
At least,
in college, that's just not the case. In college, the head coach makes more than just about all of them. Way more than just about all of them. So are we going to see a market shift where you say, hey, if we're going to spend big time money, does it really make sense where we're buying rosters and trying to buy championships through the portal to give a guy $49 million to not coach instead of giving that money to your roster? So what if they went to James Franklin? This is just theoretically. Maybe the next time this happens somewhere and say, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to revise your contract. You might not be willing to sign it, but we got to check before we fire you, because we're about to dismiss you without cause. You'll get the full $49 million. You might tell us to go to hell and just take the $49 million. Here's option 2. Option 2 is, over the next 2 years, first of all, we're going to revise your contract. We got to sign it. And if you want to, you sign it. Your option. We're going to take the buyout clause out of it. So if we fire you, you get nothing. Well, first of all, we're going to guarantee we're not going to fire you for at least 2 years. We're going to guarantee that. Right now, we're going to take that $49 million, and each of the next 2 years, we're going to put $25 million additional dollars into your roster. And if you don't deliver us a championship, at least in the Big Ten, we can maybe even talk about incentivizing a national championship. You're out of here. So you got 2 more years with $25 million additional dollars each of those 2 years to go toward building your roster. You think Texas Tech spent money? Let's get serious about spending money and do that instead of paying you not to coach. That doesn't seem effective for anybody. Is that really efficient for anybody? Why don't instead we continue to pay you to coach and take the money we otherwise would pay you not to coach and supersize our roster with anybody we want? And see where that leads us in 2 years. And if it doesn't lead us where we want to be, then you're out of here in 2 years. Quite frankly, why would James Franklin sign that? I don't know that he would.
Right.
But it's just a kind of an interesting version as to where this might be heading. Instead of having all these crazy incentive-laden, buyout-heavy contracts, are we going to start seeing situations that are more akin? I mean, think about Joey McGuire's background at Texas Tech. Joey McGuire was a high school football coach in the state of Texas, and a daggone good one. So good, in fact, he's in the high school football coaching Hall of Fame. I mean, he's a high school football legend in the state of Texas. When Matt Rule took the Baylor job, Matt Rule had never recruited Texas. He knew nothing about recruiting Texas, but he was smart enough to tap Joey McGuire on the shoulder and say, hey, nobody knows Texas high school football like you. Join my staff. Help me recruit. Let me in with these head coaches down here. You rub shoulders with them. So that's how Joey McGuire even got into the college game. And that was 5 minutes ago. We just blinked and that happened.
Yeah.
Fast forward a few years later, he parlays that into the Texas Tech head coaching job. And that's how he landed where he's at. And that's why he's making, I don't know, I looked at his number the other day. Is it 4.2 million? I don't remember what it is, but it's not a number that's going to blow you away. So is that where we're heading? Instead of getting a bidding war, okay, and hire somebody, whether it's Manny Diaz, whoever it might be, and give him the same financial setup that he had, at Penn State that James Franklin had at Penn State, trying to beat Ohio State and Michigan and all the others, and a burgeoning Indiana program. Instead of doing that, maybe look at saying, hey, why don't we invest more heavily on the roster end of it and not so much on the coaching end of it? It's just interesting. At some point, I think the market is going to shift. Again, I can't attach a timeline to it. If you're going to become more NFL-like, right now, that's one area that we are still fundamentally un-NFL-like, overpaying coaches to make way more than your best players. That is purely un-NFL-like. No, I'm not saying we'll reach a point where the quarterback's making 10 times more than the coach. I'm not saying that's what we're going to get. I'm just saying the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle as we adjust these things and continue to move forward as these, again, that list of buyouts is still there. It's crazy. That list of buyouts, if you
Oh,
want
it's
to
nuts.
look at it, somebody posted it.
Ryan Days is like 80 some million dollars.
It's insane.
I mean, it's wild.
Insane. Yep. So that's my take on that. And that's what I see others talking about. Look, I didn't invent the wheel here. This is something people are talking about. And I just think that as the game continues to evolve, that might in fact be one of the areas that we see some evolution take place in the next handful of years.
Leave it up to you, Jed, to come up with the one angle of this that I had not thought about at all. Joey McGuire, 9th highest paid coach in the Big 12, it looks like. That's it.
12. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
do you think he's a happy man in Lubbock, Texas, making what he's making with the most talented roster in his conference? That's job security. So now I'm sure if you take that most talented roster and win with it and bring home some hardware and some coveted prizes and play on the biggest stages, he'll be rewarded for that. And he'll no longer be the 9th. But at this juncture, and again, I don't want to undersell what Joey McGuire's doing. You need to show up and manage that, and it works out. I mean, people at every level of sports have tried to buy championships, and it doesn't always work. So to handle that the way that he's handled it and have the success that he has halfway through the season to be unblemished, that says a lot right there. But that money that Cody Campbell and others have been behind at Texas Tech and the renovations to their facility and the renovations to their stadium, I mean, that is a growing brand that others better be on high alert for. Again, right now, I've watched them on tape a handful of times, just watching our opponents and things like that. And that is an incredibly talented football team that's for real. And it all starts to me with that front seven. I mean, that front seven is pure nasty, and they can put you in position to do a lot of things that I've never seen a Texas Tech team really be able to do.
You ready for this? Joey McGuire is the 51st highest paid head coach in Division I college football. 51st.
And his roster ranks where, Wes? In
like
terms
second,
of what they're paid?
Like second or third.
Second.
Yeah.
So is that the new model? You pay your coach not even in the top 50, and you pay your roster number 2. Is that the new model? I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying I can't be the only one that's noticing this. I've seen others talk about it. So when you hear Urban Meyer and all these other big names, when Penn State comes open, all these others that are going to demand 9, 10, 12 million, whatever it might be per year, are you going to look at that and say, all right, hire that guy or 10 or 12 million or 9 million or 8 million or whatever it might be, and bring him in to ask him to do the things with the same finances and resources that James Franklin could not? Or maybe you don't need that guy making 10 million a year. And maybe that 10 million a year, maybe you take half of that and spend it on your roster instead, in addition to rev share, in addition to the other NIL. I don't know. It's an interesting topic, which we'll close with this, Wes. I asked you to go ahead, Wes.
I was just going to say, I think that it is an interesting topic, but I also think it's a sad topic, because if you're someone like Ohio State, you'll say, we'll just do both. We don't have to choose between one or the other. We'll pay Ryan Day $13 million a year, and we'll have the $30 million roster.
That's the beauty of it, Wes. Those are the blue bloods, and the blue bloods will always be the blue bloods. But the question is, and Texas Tech is in position with that young oil money that a lot of people aren't. But at least it gives you some sort of plan to try and forge if you're not a blue blood. In other words, I'm not saying that the numbers would equate to what they equate to at Texas Tech, but maybe the distribution would, to try and hedge your bets and build some level of success. You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, and I asked you
But
to ponder a question, and we'll close with this, unless you got
just
something to
real
add.
quick, I was just going to say
Yeah.
highest buyout for a head coach in college football. Kirby, it's not Ryan Day. He's second. Kirby Smart is first with $105 million buyout. $105 million.
Oh, oh, wow, 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 wow.
Good
Yeah,
Lord. Georgia could fire him. He could afford to buy the school. Good
yes.
Lord.
Afforded by the state. So,
Yeah, I might go in and buy up Atlanta.
yeah. Well, anyway, I said a lot of time to bounce back and Sherman burn it down, but that's 105 million bucks. Woo, yeah, yeah. And we thought 75 was a million, which it was for Jimbo, but
Wild.
best job in America, fired football coach. Fired football coach, I mean, I was initially hearing with James Franklin, there wasn't offset language in that contract, and I thought, what? But there actually is. He is
Yeah.
compelled to go take. How ironic would it be if he took the UCLA job? They had a hand in his
That would
demise.
be pretty. That would be pretty hilarious,
Yeah.
actually.
So, okay, I asked you to consider this. All right. Outside of, we know Oklahoma State's going to have a new head coach for the first time since Moby Dick was a guppy because Mike Gundy was jettisoned. All right. Uh, and I mentioned Utah has a coach in a waiting situation with their defensive coordinator, Morgan Scalley. And I think that's great on their part. He's been such an instrumental part of what Kyle Whittingham has done there. Now, I don't know if Kyle Whittingham has announced when he's going to retire. There was chatter he might do it last offseason, but he didn't want to walk out after a 5-7 season. So I don't know if he does it this year, next year, in 3 years. I don't know. I need a Utah fan on here to educate me on that. But so let's remove those from the equation. My question to you is this: outside of those two schools, will any other program in the Big 12 have a new head coach next year because, on some way, either positively, negatively, whatever, something's dislodged or impacted by this
Yeah,
coaching cycle? And what I'm saying is, it doesn't take somebody being fired, obviously.
I get what
Somebody
you're
could leave
saying.
for another job.
Totally.
So
Yes,
that's
totally.
my question to you. Yeah. Does the Big 12, who do you think would be most likely? I think
I
I
was
know
going
where
to
you'll go
say,
with
I
this.
think I would be naive not to say yes because there's 16 teams in the Big 12, and you're just playing the numbers game at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Oklahoma State, yes, obviously. WVU and UCF, barring something crazy, no, obviously. They're in first
First year. Yeah.
years with a new head coach. I I continue to just wait for the offseason that one of these programs with money is going to pluck Matt Campbell away from Iowa State. I've thought it's going to happen for 6 or 7 years now, so I always think that that's a possibility. Um,
It's the way his contract's structured, unless I'm wrong. The irony of it is, I don't think it takes a lot of money. Check his
I don't think
buyout.
it does. It doesn't either. I just had it up here. I can
I
pull it
think
up.
he can be bought out relatively
So
easy, but if they fire him without cause, they have to pay him big money. But if he goes to the NFL, there is no buyout. If he goes to another college job, it's some
right,
nominal amount, right?
right.
It's not that much to buy out Matt Campbell. There's an interesting working relationship he has with the athletic department there. There's a lot of faith which goes two ways. And I
Yes.
don't think he has your typical 20, 30, $40 million buyout. I don't think that's the case unless I'm wrong. And if so, please correct me.
I can't find particulars on it right now, and I don't want to waste time doing the research, but that does sound correct. But he's just one that, again, I've thought for 5, 6 years now that eventually he's going to end up somewhere in a bigger boat. I think there's at least somewhat of a chance that Deion Sanders isn't the head coach of Colorado, and not because of performance. I mean, they're 3-4 right now, but they obviously lost a ton last year, namely the Heisman Trophy winner and Shedeur Sanders as well too. But what if Deion ends up going to a bigger program? And I know he's the highest paid coach in the Big 12. He's one of the highest paid coaches in the country, so he's already making good money. He's making close to $10 million a year, and I'm sure he has a substantial buyout too. But what if an NFL team wants Deion? You know, what if the Cleveland Browns fire Kevin Stefanski and then want to hire Deion to coach up Shador and Dylan Gabriel? I just feel like I should throw that one. But those are really it's not as many as you would think, because like teams that are struggling like WVU and UCF are in year one with a new head coach. They're not going to fire them. I guess Kenny Dillingham's probably another one I should mention. If he were to be in the running for like I could see a scenario where Matt Rule goes to Penn State because that's his alma mater and takes that job, and Kenny Dillingham ends up at Nebraska, like something like that. Heck, maybe it would just be Dana Holgerson sliding into that spot there in Nebraska. But I digress.
Maybe
There's a couple, but really not that many.
no, there's not. And I would start with this. First, let's look at the two that if they completely fall apart and the wheels come off down the stretch, which I don't think is going to happen with either. But let's say that does happen and they win one game the rest of the way and just completely fall apart and implode. The two that would be in danger if that happens, Dave Aranda at Baylor.
Yeah, it's a good one.
We don't think that way, but if they go on some kind of run where they drop the last six, I don't think that's going to happen. Again, I preface it by saying that. But based on what he's done in recent history, yeah, they got hot late last year, but even that he had to turn around. I don't think that's going to happen. And then the other one that I would say that about it would, if that happened at Arizona, that would be dangerous for Brent Brennan just because of how last year went. He got a chance to reinvent himself this year. But okay, outside of that, the thing with Deion, I would almost say this job's a grind. Coaching in general is a grind at the NFL level or the major college level. He's having health issues. He had clots last week.
Yeah, he could also just retire.
He had the bladder replacement, or he had the bladder removed. He's had health issues, and it wears on you if you're a healthy person. Deion's not a healthy person. So I would almost say before I would expect to take him even if he appeals to those in positions of power that would hire him at a more marquee job. I would say you might see Deion stepping down from coaching before I'd see him taking another bigger job.
A great point.
I would almost say that. Okay.
That's a great point.
And then the sneaky one to me, okay, go through some of the hot names. Kalani Sitake, I think he's in a good place. I don't think he would do it. Joey McGuire, the reasons we just talked about. Nobody's going to try and do that for what he's worth, and he'd be crazy to leave Texas Tech with what's going on. I don't think Satterfield's yet there at Cincinnati. He does this 2 or 3 years, then that's a different animal. Yeah, he could turn it into something. Utah, we talked about. Arizona State, Dillingham is an Arizona State guy through and through. It wouldn't be the first time we know that. To see somebody leave their alma mater. We saw it happen with Rich a number of years ago, but I just don't get the impression that he's wired right yet to do that. They haven't hit their ceiling quite yet there. Houston, no, still premature to say that. We talked about Matt Campbell at Iowa State. The one that I would land on that's interesting to me, Kansas State with Chris Kleiman. Chris Kleiman might be a guy. I don't know. I don't speak for him, obviously. Maybe he's reaching a point like he feels like, have I hit my ceiling here? Yeah. Okay. Look what I've accomplished. Double-digit win seasons. I've been in the Big 12 championship how many times? I don't know how much more he thinks he can do before it starts turning the other way and the expectations outreach what can be achieved on a regular basis because of the expectation. He took what Bill Snyder did and almost didn't miss a beat, really.
Yeah.
So, and that's a guy that you often see surface on a lot of lists as well. And he's not a spring chicken. So from a career move standpoint, maybe that factors in. But yeah, that's kind of how I see that. It's interesting because normally you feel like there's 2 or 3 that you're certain, oh, this job, something's going to happen. Something's going to break loose there. Something's going to break loose there.
Right.
But that's just at this juncture, not the case. But I thought the James Franklin dismissal gave us an interesting excuse to talk about this looking forward to next year.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting question that you posed. And hey, if one thing that we've learned from James Franklin is you mentioned, who was 16, 17 days ago, had a touchdown lead in overtime over Oregon with an undefeated Penn State team and is now fired. Things could change very quickly, even by the time we get to Halloween. So that's something
what do you think? How deep are we into the show for the UCF preview? And we haven't touched on West Virginia UCF. Imagine what the comments are going to say for this one.
So, goodness. Hey, here's the beauty of this. It's an on-demand show. This is not live radio. If you don't like it, you can fast forward to the game preview, but we will get to that when we return on the other side. Jed Drenning, Wes Uhler, the Mountaineers will head down to UCF, head down to Orlando. For the second time in just a short span here as well too. Certainly second time in a couple years. I know Jed's not complaining about that trip in staying in the time zone and 1 o'clock kickoff there at the Acrisure Bounce House. We will get into all of that. Mountaineers and Knights. We'll break it down when we return on the other side. You are in the gun.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings.
Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
You're listening to Mountaineer Football Talk.
ITG. When the sun's just rising and the work won't wait, you need the equipment that works just as hard as you do. Johnson Equipment delivers power, performance, and reliability day in, day out. Whether you're plowing fields, hauling loads, or planting the future, our tractors are built to take it and then some. Strong, reliable, ready. 0% financing available for up to 84 months on select models.
Johnson Equipment, farming made easy.
Get all your Mountaineer gear in WVU apparel at the Book Exchange. They're the locally owned and operated retailer with more than 90 years of selling everything you need for game day and everything else you need to show you're the ultimate WVU fan. Shop at their 2 locations at downtown Morgantown or Evansdale on Pattison Drive, or online at bookexchangewv.com.
When shopping online at bookexchangewv.com, be sure to enter code INTHEGUN20 at checkout for an awesome savings of 20%. That's right, 20%.
Back in the gun here as we roll along. It is time to preview the Mountaineers and the Knights down at the Acrisure Bounce House, WVU and UCF. Jed, oddly, weirdly, I mean, these are 2 programs that really mirror each other right now in this sense of they are in year 1 with a new head coach who has also been the head coach before. So a new head coach, but not someone who's a new name or a new face, somebody they're familiar with. A ton of roster turnover as well, just like WVU. Almost an entirely rebuilt offense, new defensive coordinator, a big name defensive coordinator. I mean, like I said, it is kind of in the month of October here, spooky how much these 2 programs currently mirror each other. And it's going to be a big opportunity for one to kind of springboard the back half of their season with a win on Saturday. So let's get into it. Let's start talking about this UCF offense. I mean, the Gus Malzahn days are gone. Scott Frost is back. And I know they've had a ton of I think almost all their offensive line is gone. I know every receiver that caught a pass for them last year is gone. Much like, again, mirroring each other, much like the Mountaineers, this is an offense that is still midway through the season trying to find their identity, trying to carve out an identity, a bread and butter, what they do well, really still kind of in an evaluation process.
They rank dead last in the Big 12 in returning production with, in fact, every offensive position group. Now, think about that. So that's the impact that Jaheim White returning at West Virginia did have. Okay, that's why West Virginia, because we were counting Jaheim, right? So who's obviously not been available since week 2. But, yeah, there's a lot of parallels. This just in, that's kind of the new nature of hiring a new coach. Yes, there's going to be significant roster turnover with the portal and all the changes to the modern game, irrespective of your circumstance. But when you hire a new coach, there's some gasoline thrown on that fire. So you have 60 some odd new players at UCF. You have 81 at West Virginia. So that's 2 things. That's 140 new players on the field or between these two programs, I should say, Saturday. And then the other thing, I think this speaks to it too. Wes, when's the last time? Because I was listening to Scott Frost earlier in the week with his comments leading up to the game, and he's not going to name a starting quarterback. Well, now he did say it looks like all hands are on deck. We're healthy, and we'll walk through their quarterback situation here shortly. But Rich isn't either. When's the last time you saw a college football game and you didn't know which either starting quarterback was going to be? That doesn't happen often. I think that kind of speaks to the zany nature of this matchup. So we're both starved for a Big 12 win. Neither one of us have one. I mentioned to you before we came on the air during the break that UCF is actually after their first win in the month of October since 2022.
That's insane.
It's crazy. I mean, if you remember, they kind of folded after the first month of the season. The Big 12 and their lack of depth caught up to them, so they tried to recalibrate. Next thing you know, you got a new coach. The KJ Jefferson, experiment didn't work out like they would have hoped. He just turned into a sack machine last year. And now, okay, let's fast forward to their quarterback situation and what's going on right now. It's basically, if this sounds familiar, please stop me. To some extent, you can call it a three-headed monster, but not really. One of those is Ja'Cory Brown, who transferred a couple years ago from Miami. He's more of a running threat or running asset. I don't know if they necessarily, at least up to this point, have viewed him as a full-time go guy. So it came down to a battle in the preseason between two transfers who have played a lot of football elsewhere. Cam Fancher, who spent some time at Marshall before transferring to Florida Atlantic, and then landed at UCF. Stop me next time I do that, because I'm prone to. And then Taven Jackson, who, among other things, spent some time in Indiana. He's a battle-tested commodity as well. So there was a true quarterback battle between those two guys leading up to the opener against Jacksonville State. Cam Fancher won the job. Next thing you know, things aren't going well. He gets a little dinged up. He's not playing incredibly well, and frustrating that offense against Jack State in the opener. They only won 17-10. In comes Taven Jackson, and he kind of wins the job, and then it's his job for the next handful of weeks until he gets dinged up. Cam Fancher comes back in last week on the road against Cincinnati. I don't want to say he played well because they only scored 11 points, and one was a touchdown and a 2-point conversion late in the game, but he didn't play poorly. I mean, he did show some things against Cincinnati. He's a very active quarterback. I mean, he's probably of the two, when you listen to Rich talk, he'll point out that even Taven Jackson is kind of athletic. He's an athletic kid that has that dual threat dimension. Fancher's more of the scrambler. So both of them can hurt you with their legs. And this is coming down, West, to a time when we talked about early in the season the success that we were having pressuring the quarterback, which Zach Alley's not going to slow down. Pressure is his DNA defensively. That's what we do. But the issue is we're not getting home with sacks. Through the first, I have the numbers right here. If you look through the first 3 games of the season, we were parked at 12 sacks through 3 games, and we were among the national leaders, in some cases the top 5, top 10 in a lot of those categories. That was until this drought hit. We have been sackless in the last 3 games. Now, that's 89 dropbacks by opposing quarterbacks in 3 games. What did those 3 quarterbacks have in common in those 3 games? Jalen Daniels, Devin Dampier, and Bear Bachmeier. They're all in their own way.
They can all move.
They can all move. Either by strength or by twitch, they can all move. And that's the case with both of these quarterbacks at UCF. So, when you look at the dropbacks, Kansas, 28 dropbacks, we had no sacks. Utah, 34 dropbacks, we had no sacks. BYU, 27 dropbacks. And sacks kind of drive your TFLs because they count both ways in the statistical category. Even when you look at that, Wes, we've only had 9 TFLs in the last 3 games. So that's only 9 times we were able to knock the opponent off script. That's something else that you can't. That's not winning football. That's just not winning football. But that's the issue we're tasked with. And when you look at what they do offensively, Scott Frost is obviously a former quarterback in Nebraska. He's an offensive guy, so he's a big part of behind what they do offensively. When he was there the last time, he had a lot of success with their mythical national championship, of which they hang the banner in the stadium at the bounce house. That's one of the first things you see hanging above the rafters that are hanging above the stands.
Mickey Mass down there in
Yeah,
Orlando.
that's right. But they did it with tempo. I mean, it used to be called UF Fast, or I think that was how they went about that. But UC Fast, that's what they called it, UC Fast. But then he got to Nebraska, and he kind of toned that down some. I mean, there was a lot of bravado when he took the Nebraska job and said, "Hey, how are you going to adjust to Big Ten defenses and the more plotting style of play up here?" He said, "They'll adjust to me."
Yeah,
Well, the next thing you know, that didn't work out that way. So, yeah, he kind of slowed his tempo. Yes, he'll hit the pedal sometimes, but it's certainly not the case that it was his last run through UCF. So he's more methodical. I mean, case in point, last week in that loss to Cincinnati, and this tells you why this stat is still so often, unless used for a specific purpose, on one of the most overrated stats in all of football. They had the football from a time of possession standpoint against Cincinnati West for almost 40 minutes. So yeah, I mean, there's what did that get him? It got him 11 points. That's what it got him. So they're not the tempo oriented team they once were, though there are times they'll accelerate and they will use it. I would expect them to try and take their shots. They're a team that has demonstrated an ability to put drives together, no doubt about that. When I was looking at the lengthy drives they've had this season, somewhere I have the numbers here in my notes, but they have very extensive and lengthy drives. They had a 17 and a 19 play drive against Cincinnati. On one of those, they didn't score. So that's been the issue. They haven't made the most of things at the end of some of those lengthy drives, but they can stay on the field and navigate 10 plus play drives. That's, again, when you have veteran quarterbacks, that's the mark of a team led by veteran quarterbacks, and that's in effect what they've been. So what we got to do is be more disruptive, find ways to pressure them, get home on some of that pressure. We talk about this every week. We've got to knock them off script. I mean, that's the recipe for success on third down, is winning on first down. Again, Cam Fancher, we talked about it, started that game against Jack State, lost the job to Tavon Jackson. Ja'Curry Brown is an element. We don't know if he'll play or not, but he's healthy. At least I think all three of them are healthy at this juncture. They've got different backs that will hurt you. The Montgomery kid is twitchy. He's a complete back. He runs physical. He has great vision. That's one of the things we'll talk about in the film notes. And then you got Jaden Nixon, who's a home run threat. If you remember him from a couple of years ago at Oklahoma State before he transferred out and did big things at Western Michigan, and he lands at UCF. But they've done a good job of recruiting some kids through the portal that are Florida kids that landed elsewhere and were looking to come home to Florida. We'll talk about some of that on the defensive side with them, but that's kind of what they've done. Now, when you get into how they distribute the football when they do try and throw it, heavy to their wideouts, 61% of their targets are to their wideouts, but still 1 out of 4 are to the tight ends. They don't use the backs that much in the pass game. If you want to look at some of their tendencies offensively, again, no huddle. Yes, they'll sprinkle some in, but it's not what it used to be with them. They're a big 11 and 12 personnel team. Remember, that's 1 tight end and 2 tight ends with 1 back. They'll mix some of those in there. They use motion. And again, we'll talk about this in the film study portion, but they use motion for a purpose, for a reason. It's very strategic. We'll get into some of those numbers. But we faced these teams in recent weeks that work the quick game very heavily, right? We talked about it so much, not just with Jalen Daniels in Kansas, but with Devin Dampier and Utah. That's not the case as much with these guys with the quick game. And it's not the case necessarily as much from a screen standpoint. So maybe that puts us in position to get after them a little bit. If you're trying to rush the passer, if they're not a heavy screen team, that means either they're due or that's not part of what they do.
Right.
They just haven't showed a lot of that on tape. Another very heavy zone run team. So they lean on that. And they've done a good job in replacing the offensive line that they lost. You talked about them missing 4 starters, and I've been kind of impressed with what they got there. They've got a battle-tested veteran at left tackle, a foreign kid. He's one of the European kids. You're talking about a guy that's played in 54 college games, so 55 now, actually. So you got a lot of experience there. It's just these kids haven't necessarily played much for UCF, but they played elsewhere. Here are their starts. across the offensive line. 17 career starts, 15, 25, 19, 5. So that's kind of what you're looking at. A mixed bag, much like the same types of things that they would be saying at this juncture about us.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to break down, first jump in and I'll get into some of the tape stuff, Wes.
Yeah, well, just looking at them on paper, Jed, analytically, they're a little bit of an enigma in a way offensively. Here's what I mean by that. Their run block grade on PFF is one of the worst in the conference, right at the bottom with WVU. But their run grade is one of the highest in the conference. So run blocking grade is terrible, but their running backs are ranked very highly. Same church, different pew. Their pass blocking grade is over a 77. That's one of the best in the conference. Their passing grade is a 53, one of the worst in the conference. So there's a lot of, okay, you're running the ball effectively, but your run blocking grades are terrible. You're pass blocking very well, but your passing grade is terrible. And again, I mean, I think it makes sense. Like they are same as us, half a season into a complete overhaul and still trying to get on the same page, all these different things. But it's an interesting offense because they certainly have their struggles. But they've got some strengths. They've got some meat and potatoes in there as well too.
They do. There's definitely some disjointed elements to what they're doing, as you talked about. Some of the things seem counterintuitive when you look at them. And again, here's another one: ability to put lengthy drives together, but don't yield the points that those lengthy drives typically yield. Part of that, they're among the worst in the Big 12 in red zone offensive production. They're 14th. Less than half the time that they reach the end zone once they get to the red zone. They're in the bottom half of the Big 12 and another key metric, and that's third down success. So those are areas to keep an eye on in a game like this where you're trying to stack pennies and impact things as much as you can from a matchup standpoint. But I'll get into some film notes and I'll hit part of that matchup. But
let's do it.
Okay, some of the things, a steady diet of true play action in this age of RPOs. People so often confuse a run pass option play with an old play action concept. There's a fundamental difference. This is truly to sell the DBs and the backers, and the QBs are great at it. They're good ball handlers. They fake the ball very well, do a good job of freezing second and third level players, be it a linebacker, be it a DB, for that quick extra beat that's often needed. They're also a team that runs a lot of formation into the boundary. Oftentimes you'll see offenses do that to force a defense to declare which way they're going to defend. And sometimes when they do it actually to outnumber the defense in the throw game. I mean, sometimes you'll see trips and they'll throw a fourth element post snap and they'll have four receivers to the short side, to the boundary, just to outnumber the defense. And somebody comes wide open, maybe even on a check down, but they do a good job of game planning that. I talked about them being a very heavy zone run scheme team. 75+% of the time, that's what you're going to see out of them as opposed to gap. Decent amount of motion used. Their motion rate is 44%. But when I watch them on tape, as I mentioned, they're very intentional with it. They motion with a purpose. In other words, they're trying to get a matchup or they're trying to create some sort of impact on the route concept. So when they do motion, they motion for a reason. They like to blend motion with play action. Those are two things they do a lot of. Matter of fact, here's one for you, Wes. They have the most dropbacks of doing both motion with a true play action play fake. Most dropbacks of doing both of any team in the Big 12. In fact, only Texas, with what Sark does, and he's big on that as well, does more among all power conference teams than UCF. So think about that. Motion, play action, and oftentimes it's the motion man who's the primary target on the concept that they're going with. So that's what they're going to do. They're going to test your eye discipline by resetting the table with the motion, and then they're going to hide the football from you on play action. So it really tests what you can see and what you can do defensively and how you react to it. As I touched on, often it's the target in motion. So something else to keep an eye on. They will run from the pistol. They select times to do it. You see him pop some big plays on it. Now, when you see the pistol, again, just envision the running back, instead of aligned in the shotgun next to the quarterback, he's aligned behind the quarterback. Well, you might ask, why do they do that? Well, sometimes what happens is defenses will set their front or their call to which side the running back is in the shotgun next to the quarterback, because that tells them, okay, well, here are your options for play side runs and here are your options for backside runs. So they might make their front call dictated by where the running back is. But if he's behind the quarterback, you really can't play that guessing game.
Right.
All things are equal, and I've seen him run inside zone and pop that. Sometimes the backers will over pursue, and the cutback lane's very dangerous when they do that. Again, the vision of these backs is very specifically tailored and fits well to a zone blocking run game. Let me see here. Okay, again, I'm looking at the quarterback, Taven Jackson. He's very nimble in the pocket, not just a dual threat guy, but even within the pocket, he's very nimble and agile and can move around and buy a couple extra beats. And he does, when he does so, he does a nice job of keeping his eyes downfield, still scanning and reading the secondary to maximize the pressure on them instead of looking to run. His eyes are still downfield as he steps up. Fancher, the other quarterback, also very slippery. We talked about his scrambling ability. He handles the football very well. Another skilled play action guy. Both of these guys have been trained well. You can tell they've been coached very hard at that. And he also has great pocket awareness. So two veteran quarterbacks who feel comfortable and confident in the pocket, which is another reason we have to collision that thing and collapse it on them. Their offensive line does a good job getting movement on those zone run concepts we're talking about. That's a critical piece of that. If you can get things moving laterally, that creates holes, that creates creases, that creates daylight and space. And the O-line, even though they haven't played together a ton with all these new starters, that's something that they've done a pretty good job of. When they're having success and humming in the run game, that's a big part of the reason why. Again, running back number 22, Miles Montgomery, he sees daylight very well. He can react fast, but he's also patient to stay behind his blocks and let things develop. So he demonstrates the ability when needed to react very quickly, cat-like in that sense, but also has the patience to not always do it and not be impulsive. He demonstrates the patience when needed as things sometimes have to develop. He's very comfortable in this zone scheme that they run, and he sees the cutback. He hits it. He runs through arm tackles. Good zone running backs run through arm tackles. Owen can talk all about that because that's the case. You're trying to get backers and second and third level defenders to overrun things and either stick it or cut it back. You're going to bounce it, bang it, or bend it. And I've seen him bounce it, but more often than not, I've seen him bang it straight up and bend it back inside, and he's running through a lot of arm tackles. If those linebackers over pursue on these zone concepts, he spots the crease and he bangs it right north. They hit another one. This was one from the pistol set we talked about. Big touchdown against Kansas when this happened. Now, Central UCF, let me see, 10 personnel, empty set. They like to work the quick game underneath. So if you see them go empty with four wides on the field, that's 10 personnel. That's zero running backs, or excuse me, zero tight ends, four receivers, one running back, and they go empty. They're doing it with purpose. I don't know if you're going to get home when they do run the quick game, because quick game's not a big part of what they do. But when you do see them go empty and do start to do that, that's a time when your D-line needs to get its hands in the air. If you can deflect the football or find another way to impact the play instead of getting home on a sack, then obviously do that. When you watch their interior offensive line, like in short yardage situations, their pad level, and this is one of the times that maybe it looks like a unit that hasn't swelled together and necessarily rep things out with a great level of continuity. They don't play with the greatest pad level in some of these short yardage situations, and they get out leveraged underneath. So you can sometimes get under them and spill the football outside and kind of put it to the numbers and then just chase things down. Number 76, who's that battle-tested left tackle. Keep an eye on this. I haven't checked for an injury update, but in the Cincinnati game, he did leave with an injury. He was nursing on the sidelines. He, I think, is their most productive and consistent offensive lineman, that left tackle spot, the Euro guy. They were looking at his lower leg, so again, we'll check on that, but I don't know the circumstances surrounding it. The UCF opened their offensive line opened a lot of holes versus Cincinnati, but those holes were closed very quickly with Cincinnati's second and third level players flying downhill, which is something we're going to have to do as well. One more note from a personnel standpoint: when you watch number 9, DJ Black, big, tall, lanky kid, 6'3", 205, runs like crazy. He's actually the fastest in their receiver group, but not tremendous ball security in traffic. He put one on the carpet against Cincinnati, but man, can he run. Again, I go back to number 22 being a very decisive runner. So that's part of what I see there. And I would close with this. From a field position standpoint, this is something to keep an eye on, Wes. West Virginia defensively and UCF offensively. From a starting field position standpoint, we rank defensively 126th in the country.
Cool.
In terms of where the opposition starts on average. That's just over the 30-yard line on average. Offensively, they're not much better. They're 115th. So, which is at the 25.66-yard line is how they rank that out. So I think that's something to keep an eye on there. If you can stack pennies, and we'll get into some of the reasons when we talk about our offense that impact these field position woes. But if you can find a way to impact that, they struggle with it as well. But if you can win the starting field position battle in a game like this, it always matters. And when you get into double-digit differences in that category, that's almost as telling as turnovers in terms of who wins the game. But this is one where they struggle and we struggle. So if we can struggle a little less and win that thing by 4 or 5 yards, kind of a pillow fight in that respect.
Yeah.
If we can swing that pillow a little harder than they do and win that starting field position battle by 4 or 5 yards, that could tilt our way in a significant fashion. And in an even matchup like this, yeah, things like that can matter. But that's how I see the matchup with our defense and their offense.
Just a couple things here to add to that, Jed. Ironically, I was telling you about how these two teams mirror each other in a lot of ways. You ready for another eerily similar one? Both of these teams averaging 75.2 offensive snaps per game at this point in the season, averaging the exact same amount of offensive snaps, both of these teams. So, spoiler alert, we could be playing 150-ish snaps on Saturday down there at the Bounce House.
We both have exactly 340 penalty yards through 6 games.
Jeez, that's weird. That's very weird.
How weird is that? Yeah.
That is bizarre. And last one that really stands out to me, and we talked about this. I mentioned this was a number that I mentioned when we did kind of our bye week mid-season reset episode last week. Remember, I went through some numbers there with the WVU passing game. And one of the things that I pointed out was that we do actually have good passer ratings from clean pockets, but that we're really struggling with big time throw percentage at just 3.3% of the time. UCF, Jed, big time throw percentage, just a hair over 2%. So even less than us. Limit these guys on the ground, make their quarterback have to drop back and throw and stand there in the pocket and make some big time throws, something that they have done very poorly, very infrequently this season. Yes. I think that's how we get this defense back to doing some of those good things that we saw the first handful of weeks when I think we were all still very high and very encouraged by this defense.
I think that's absolutely the case. And if you can get pressure on them, if you can to some extent neutralize, because I do think Montgomery's a player. I think that's a big part of those skewed numbers that you're seeing in terms of their run production versus their run blocking production. When you watch them on tape, he's making guys miss. He has wiggle. He runs physical. He runs hard. He runs angry. And it's that combination. It's that scary combination of both quickness and patience. So, yeah, something to keep an eye on there. But if you want to shift gears to the other side of the football, let's look at some of their defensive tendencies with the Alex Grinch who stole Christmas.
You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch.
Indeed. We saw him back in his Oklahoma days. Of course, he left Oklahoma and went with Lane Kiffin. Riley. Tomato. They've both been at USC. So,
that's right. Both hot shot young coaches who were at USC at one point.
Right. So, all right, let's look at this. You talk about a mixed bag. He's a base even front team, but there's a lot of different looks, and we have this conversation every week. A lot of different looks from a personnel grouping standpoint, from odd stack to 2 down to a traditional 3-4. You'll see some 4-2 elements in there, quite a few sometimes. Traditional 4-3. Now, not as heavy from a blitz standpoint as some of those we've seen in recent weeks. But and here's one of the things about it too, Wes. They obviously prepare and game plan well out of the gates. They're among the best in the country in terms of points allowed in the first quarter. And I always think, okay, sometimes that's skewed by how many times you won the toss or lost the toss, because one possession can make so much difference in first quarter scoring. So I take it a step further beyond just the scoring, which, oh, by the way, they hadn't allowed a single point in the first quarter until Cincinnati last week. Those are the first quarter points. So let's take it a step further and look at the opposition's first possession, irrespective of when that took place. 6 first possessions to start the game this year, Wes, 4 punts and 2 picks. So nobody's bared fruit on that first drive. So right out of the gates, they got you starting behind the 8 ball. So that's a lot of game planning and scouting. So hats off to this defensive crew for that. But when you look at some of the things that they like to do defensively and some of the things that Alex Grinch traditionally likes to do, I went back and dusted off some of my old Oklahoma notes from watching tape on some of that.
Nice.
And some of those tendencies are still, in fact, there. Now, remember who he is. He came from that, when you look at Mount Union, the Division III powerhouse in Ohio, we know all the names that came out of there. I mean, you got Sirianni, the head coach in Philadelphia with the Eagles. You got Matt Campbell. Alex Grinch was actually a teammate of Matt Campbell's in the late 90s on some of those Mount Union teams. He coached for Mike Leach at Washington State, which I think was a great learning experience for him because that really showed him how you coach defense for a wide open, spread-oriented offensive coach. So I think that was a great experience for him, and that's really when he first made his name for himself. But you'll see him; he'll play with a true nickel, but that true nickel can align in coverage and also play near the box with some level of physicality. They have a hybrid defensive end who doesn't these days, right? So sometimes you'll see them try and bounce in and out of an odd front, that 3-4 we talked about.
Yeah.
He'll often use 5 defensive backs, sometimes even as a base, and put that hybrid defensive end type outside backer. Think in terms of our bandit in coverage or as an extra rusher. What looks like sometimes people say it might not look like any of these things have anything in common, but it's really more coordinated chaos, it's been called, than what it sometimes appears. But on tape, you'll see some of this come together. Now, versus modern spread offense, if the defense chooses to stay in static alignments, the offense will identify and, in fact, attack that deficiency against defenses, which is one of the reasons. In other words, sitting still and being a sitting target is a big problem for defenses, for modern defenses. That's not the case with what he does. You'll see a lot of movement. A lot of that movement is pre-snap, and a lot of that movement is post-snap. So sometimes, and Rich talked to some extent about this in his coaching show this week, sometimes you'll try and get a bead on what their front looks like, but then they'll stem. They'll kick that front right before the snap, and all of a sudden, maybe your assignment changes. And maybe somebody that you thought you were blocking now changes, and now you thought you had a 3 technique, now you got a backer. Yep. So it takes communication and ID skills on the part of the offensive line with all that movement. That's something that makes this very difficult in terms of getting a bead on what he does. Now, when I watch tape on them, first, let's look at, let me see here, what I was talking about earlier. Okay, now we talked about the starting field position for West Virginia's defense. Here's part of the reason why. There's a metric called quality drive rate, and it's pretty self-explanatory. It's going to evaluate some combination of drives that yield points, or drives that gain a certain amount of yards, or drives that even accumulate a certain amount of snaps or plays. So if it's identified as a quality drive, it doesn't have to score. It just impacts field position or impacts the game in some way. West Virginia's offensive quality drive rate is 130th in the country. What's that mean? That means not only it's only 25.4% of the time are we putting together a quality drive. Well, that means we're not even necessarily impacting field position that much, Wes, which also contributes to that defensive starting field position that we talked about.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? How all of it comes together. So that's something to keep in mind here as you look through some of what they're going to try and do to us defensively and otherwise. But funny thing about it is their leading tackler, that linebacker, number 20, who is a player and a half, he's a Tampa kid who actually played for Zach Alley at Oklahoma last year, transferred home to Florida to be closer to home to Tampa, and now he's at UCF. So he's not the only guy they've done that with, but they've got some players. They've got some guys that can move on the defensive line. They've got some athletic linebackers. They've got some explosive guys off the edge. They got corners who aren't afraid to get handsy, which we'll get into right here. And watching their tape, again, one of the things that stands out is all the movement, both pre and post snap, by their defensive line. Huge challenge for the West Virginia offense. I'm looking at linebacker number 43, Kozlowski. Great nose for the football. He's one of those backers. They have 2 or 3 or even 4 that can do this. But nose for the football, he's able to get skinny through gaps and find a way. It's almost the defensive version of seeing daylight and getting through one of those creases to be disruptive. He's very tough to block. He's among their top tacklers as well. 3rd and long, I've seen him sometimes show cover or 3-4 with cover 1 man free behind it. And to make things difficult, remember, it's 3rd long. So think of the type of route combinations that you're looking for, and you're seeing what looks like a pressure package out of a 3-4. But instead, what they'll do is they'll drop the outside backers, those edge rushers, into zone. And one of those, sometimes, if it's an athletic quarterback, will even spy that quarterback. They'll take the will backer. He'll drop into a zone looking for crossing routes, but at the same time, keeping an eye on athletic quarterback. So that's a nice little wrinkle that they have. They have edge guys that get off the ball quick. I have a couple notes on them. Crash hard on the zone. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. They're dangerous from the backside from a pursuit standpoint. In other words, let's say you go zone read, or let's say you go counter read, any of these concepts that you identify a conflict defender that the quarterback is supposed to neutralize with his read. All right. Well, if that defender crashes hard, the quarterback keeps it. Right. Well, sometimes he doesn't crash hard. He stays just long enough to get the quarterback to give it. Then he crashes. These guys do that. They do a lot of that. So there's going to be some cat and mouse going on with that quarterback run game in terms of those reads. When they crash hard, again, they'll even attack the zone. So if you go inside zone, you'll see one of them crash hard, the unblocked defender knock out that inside zone, and they'll scrape the backer to account for the quarterback. So they'll even flat out tell them, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give a concept with a backside fit to occupy that quarterback when they try and go zone read. Remember what a zone read is. The quarterback is going to eye the unblocked defensive end to the backside as you run zone away from it. What they'll do, Wes, they'll crash that defensive end hard so the quarterback thinks he has a clean sweep or a clean pull read, and they'll scrape the backer over top to occupy the quarterback, and then here comes a nickel off the edge, and they got the quarterback outnumbered. They're very good at that, which is what it's going to take is to send over what we call a surfer, an extra blocker. And so don't be surprised if you see sometimes that backside tight end, which Rich likes to do, come to the side of the quarterback on the pull. So in other words, instead of just an inside zone, it'd be what we call a split zone. If you can visualize that in your mind's eye, that's kind of what some of the things I'm seeing on tape. They're inside backers, yes, athletic and very active, but they'll also bite on misdirection. So they'll react to a lot of eye candy, zoom motion, and things like that. Sometimes you would expect those backers to be reading the offensive line, but oftentimes on tape, I noticed they weren't reading the reaction of the offensive line or the first step of the offensive line. Instead, they were going for the eye candy in the zip motion or the zoom motion or the jet sweep motion when they might, in fact, have been better served to read the offensive line. Again, I talk about more of them being dangerous from the backside. 5 heads. Now, here's one of the things I noticed. They went 5 heads. Cincinnati went empty. They went 10 personnel and went empty with 4 wides on the field and 1 back. And Cincinnati had 5 heads in the box. So it looked like a 5-man pressure, and it looked like they were trying to play either man free, which is man underneath with a free safety high, or some version of cover 3, even the way they were playing man. But the free safety, the ball's on the left hash, the free safety was cheated way wide over the trip side, out to the wide side of the field to the right. I don't know if you saw the Cincinnati game last week, but this was the early long touchdown that Brennan Sorsby threw. What happened was they came free with this blitz concept. They ended up only bringing 4. Cincinnati blew a gasket, and that ace linebacker for UCF came through absolutely clean through the A gap, untouched, right on top of Brennan Sorsby, but he reacted so quickly to that free safety's alignment up top. He recognized nobody was covering this vertical backside by the slot player. So he just launched it before that linebacker could get home and hit him. Boom, 40-yard touchdown, big play for him. So blown protection by Cincinnati by the ace backer, but quarterback ID'd it so quickly he made him pay. So you will sometimes be given some opportunities like that, but with freshman quarterbacks, we'll see, right? I mean, that's something that's a pretty advanced read and advanced recognition by a veteran quarterback and Brendan Sorsby. So those are the types of opportunities that if you can find a way to punish them, that's going to serve you very well. And I talked about their cornerbacks. The more you watch them on tape, the more handsy they get. So there might be some opportunities for some 50-50 balls downfield for our wideouts because they're very aggressive sometimes in the nature of their coverage.
Well, let's see a couple more of those contested catches from Cam Vaughn. Just to follow up on some of those things, Jed. Kelly, their one edge rusher, number 9 for UCF, out of 812 eligible graded edge rushers in college football, he's ranked in the top 50 on PFF. Bellamy, the cornerback, number 29, who you referenced, out of 846 gradable cornerbacks in college Division I college football, they have him in the top 60. So, I mean, they've got some guys on that defense that are getting some national recognition for how well they've played through their first 6 games.
They should. There's definite talent there. It looks like a talented team, but a team in transition. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
They're still trying to get their feet under them. They're still trying to settle in. They're much like we are and in a tough situation, struggling to get their first conference win. And Wes, this is one of those things. What's the latest line? I mean, I've seen it hover 7.5.
I think it's at 7.5 now. Yeah.
Okay, 7.5. So think of it like this. The statistic or the metric that follows Scott Frost around, it's the reason he got fired at Nebraska, right? In one possession games, his record is abysmal. So if you count both what happened at Nebraska and what happened at Central Florida, UCF, I try and do my best. It even says in their game notes, we like to be called UCF. But at UCF, he's 9-36. So in his career, he's only won 20% of his one possession games. They're defining one possession by 8 points or fewer.
Sure.
Okay. So now Rich has won just under 56% of his one possession games at the FBS level. So Rich is 40-32 compared to Scott Frost 9-36. So if you can go on the road, punch around, poke around, make this thing interesting, go into the fourth quarter, and it is in fact a one possession game. Well, nothing's guaranteed, but you like your odds if you can put it in a one possession game based on track records of the two coaches. But let me see. And if you look at, we know our remaining schedule, Wes. But have you looked at their remaining schedule?
Yeah, I've got it right here. If you want it, they have a bye week after this, and then they go to Baylor, host Houston, go to Texas Tech, host Okie State, and then they close the season down in Provo against BYU.
Yeah, I mean, there's no empty chairs here. Oklahoma State's coming to town. I'm sure they would have an eye on that down the stretch, but Houston at Texas Tech at BYU, these are tall chores, just like ours is. I mean, we could go through a similar conversation with what we have remaining. We're both sitting there parked at 3 wins, and we're both sitting there scrambling to see what we might be, or they're at 3 wins, we're at 2 wins, scrambling to see what we can do down the stretch. We're trying to find a way to claw our way to 4 more wins to get bowl eligible at 6 or maybe better. Who knows what might happen? They're trying to claw their way to 3 more and get to bowl eligibility. So both teams in similar situations, which is why when you look at this, all the little things are going to matter. And that's why I keep going back to that field position piece. If you can find a way to, and again, our starting field position is kind of what you would expect it to be with most of our kickoff returns starting at 25 because the nature of what we do, we're going to start it at 25. But even those things, when you look at it, Wes, from a turnover margin standpoint, they're +1, we're -1. So we're splitting hairs with most categories when you look at this. So I don't see areas that have wide chasms one way or the other between these two football teams.
I think it's going to be
So,
tight.
yeah, it's going to be in the 80s. So, we got to make sure that we're still in condition to play that type of football game. But, they've had some success running the football. They're at 200, a clip each week. West Virginia, that's been something we've leaned on, just over 200 a game. But I don't know what else to add with that.
I think that about covers it. I guess the last thing to mention is that I am sure that there will once again, like there was 2 years ago, be a nice Mountaineer contingent there at the Acrisure Bounce House. We know there's a lot of Mountaineers that have migrated down south to the Florida area and are looking forward to another opportunity to stay in state and see the old gold and blue. So let's make our presence known there as well too. Fourth quarter, close game. Hopefully, maybe our crowd can have a little impact as well. And yeah, this is like I think I would end, Jed, kind of where I started this segment. This is two teams that mirror each other a lot in a lot of ways right now. And both would love to get a win at this moment to jumpstart, to kickstart the back half of their season and grab some momentum, as we get closer to Halloween here and the road gets more narrow and narrow down the stretch of the season. It's a big kind of narrative game for both of these teams. I think if you win, you can start to spin the narrative and maybe the story of your season in the opposite direction. If you lose, you're going to be, continuing to try and dig yourself out.
One roster, very obviously, with limitations. There's no window dressing that, and why would you care to try? Now, they are as well in transition. I'm not quite sure which has more limitations, but as I said before, we have 6 games remaining, and you're trying to carve things out to, against odds, get to the postseason with 81 new players. That's only going to happen if you win 4 of your final 6 if you're West Virginia, 3 of your final 6 if you're UCF. So if you have something to try and work towards and build on, not just for the extra practices, but for all the other reasons. I mean, it really helps your youth when you find a way to get to the postseason. It's people always talk about the extra bowl practices, but the truth is that benefits your young players more than anybody. So, I mean, I don't know what that path might look like for West Virginia with the limitations of the roster, but I can promise you it's more challenging if you drop this game.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
I mean, you still have an Arizona State game out there on the road. You still have Texas Tech. We talked about them earlier in the show. You know what you're dealing with there. So those are 2 of the remaining 6 before you get into some of the hazards or dangers of the others. Houston's a good football team.
Yeah.
TCU is an incredibly explosive football team. There's no layup in those 6. So if you're trying to carve out somehow, some way with a roster that you're parked at right now to beat the odds, get to those 6, I'm not sure there's a realistic path without winning this football game. We'll see.
No doubt.
I mean, I'll try and talk myself into it if we don't win the game next week. That we can still well, you got to win 4 or 6. Well, now you got to win 4 or 5. Okay, yeah, it gets trickier. But if you can do this, and then you're coming back home to a late night start for a cold rush game, the crowd's going to be energized. They will anyway. Against a dangerous TCU team. I mean, I will say this: the positive, the kickoff gods have been on my side the last couple for the next couple. First, anytime we play on the road, as you know, I want an early kick for a host of reasons. First, yes, selfishly to get home earlier, but also it mitigates the crowd advantage on the road, which is the same reason at home I don't want an early kick. I want a 3:30 or later kick to maximize the crowd advantage. So for the next 2 weeks, I got everything I asked for. An early kick on the road to marginalize that crowd, a late kick at home to maximize that crowd. So in that respect, we've got everything going for us. So that's something to build on right there.
I like it. Jed. I'm with you. Both of these teams on 3-game losing streaks. One is going to put a W in that win column by about 4:30-ish on Saturday afternoon. Jed, Great stuff from you. Great preview, breakdown, film, all that stuff. Last thing that we got left to do before we get up out of here is our weekly Big 12 pick'em.
It is. We have Schuyler's pick in. You and I will give ours. You and I are going to reconvene, I think, Thursday morning. You'll be on the road in Cincinnati for Phil Steele
Yes,
because
well,
Schuyler's on the road.
Schuyler will be at a wedding. I will be on the road with the Steelers for my day job for a little Thursday night football against the now Joe Flacco-led Cincinnati Bengals there at Paycor Stadium. Speaking of road trips real quick, one of my favorite road trips that I do in my season travels with the Steelers. Not because Cincinnati. I mean, listen, we went to Dublin. Okay, we did New England. We're doing L.A. and Chicago still. L.A. in November. Yeah, that weather escape will be nice for a couple days, certainly. But I love the Cincinnati trip because it's close and easy. It's like a 45, 50-minute plane ride. And we stay right downtown, right next to the stadium. So it's super easy on game day. And
Marriott? Where do you stay?
Well, Jed, I mean, I don't know if I want to give those details on the public podcast here.
I think I understand. I think I know where you're staying. You're staying near the fountain. Okay.
We are staying very near the fountain. Yes, that is correct.
I got you.
And if you've ever stayed near the fountain in downtown Cincinnati, you also know that there are some fun watering holes there. Now, typically, I'll spend a Saturday night there for a Sunday game. It'll be a little different on a Wednesday night, but there'll be some World Series or some ALCS baseball going on, I think, or NLCS and some other things that I can.
Last time I was there they shut down the Brazilian steakhouse right there on the corner by the fountain.
Did they really?
It's no longer in business.
It is.
We stayed in Covington last year in Cincinnati for the Cincinnati game.
Okay.
But I looked it up and I was going to go over for that Brazilian steakhouse, which we love. Nope, closed now. I think COVID got it.
You must have, but there's some really cool O'Malley's in the alley and knockback Nats. Jed, when I go on the road, I want the stadium close to the hotel, and I want some fun watering holes within a 10-minute walk of the hotel. I got checks for both of those. But yes, I'll be hosting Phil Steele Friday with you from a hotel room in Cincinnati. We'll have some fun with Phil on the preview. Jed, you want me to go ahead and give these other guys picks here?
Yeah, you got Owens?
I haven't gotten Owens. I've been trying to track it down from him.
We'll do Owens for Phil Steele.
There you go. That's guys, perfect.
First of all, let's encourage everybody. Go to the pinned tweet or the pinned post, X, whatever you want to call it now, at In the Gun Podcast. Let us know your weekly picks, and we'll let you know how you did next week. Give you a shout out if you got something right. I am going to go this week for my passing offense. I'm going to go Baylor, TCU and Baylor. I was going to take one or the other. They're head to head. I'm going to go with Baylor with the Flying Jakes Paddles. Can't go wrong there. Sawyer Robertson playing some good football. Mr. Robertson.
It's a good pick. We every Wednesday, real quick, Jed. I don't know if I've told you this yet, but every Wednesday on the show that I do here in Pittsburgh, again for my day job, I host a drive time show on the Steelers audio network and on Fox Sports Pittsburgh. Every Wednesday, we do an around campus segment where we go through the top quarterbacks in college football and how they've been performing. Because, of course, I'm not breaking any news here either. Aaron Rodgers is going to be 42 before the season's over, and there's a very good chance that the Steelers are going to draft a quarterback in the first round next year. And it's just also an outstanding year for big-name college football quarterbacks. I had a couple people tweet me last week that were like, "You got to start including Sawyer Robinson in these around campus weekly reports." So Sawyer Robinson is now part of the 8 or 9 different Lenoris Sellers and Dante Moore and Fernando Mendoza and Nussmeier.
Mendoza. Have you crossed the Mendoza line? Yeah,
he's number. And I'll say this: I started pounding the table for him back in July when training camp opened, and so I bought. It's like buying Amazon or Apple stock when Steve Jobs or Bezos were still operating out of their garage. I'm feeling pretty good about that one. He was number 1 on my list then, and he continues to be now. But certainly Sawyer Robinson.
The table for when he was on the scrap heap and available for free for 2 years, and no one would listen. Please sign Baker Mayfield. No one would listen.
And now he's going to win the MVP. Now he's going to win the MVP this year if they continue on the same
I don't know how you could ever
trajectory that
watch
they
Baker
are.
Mayfield play football and think, nah, I don't need that. I don't need that in my organization. Don't need that. I don't know how you could do it.
Well, the Cleveland Browns
But
and the
anyway.
Carolina Panthers did it, and things are working out great for both of them right now. Good pick by you, Jed. Schuyler for his offense of the week is going to go with TCU as his offense of the week. So it'll be a fun kind of you and Schuyler there involved in the same game, both hoping for some offense, and you could certainly get some offense in Fort Worth there between the Horned Frogs and the Bears.
If Schuyler wins, I might win.
Exactly right. It's like you'll both do well or you'll both do poorly.
Yeah.
You guys might be conjoined there. We'll give Owen's pick on Phil Steele Friday. Jed, I was very tempted to take UCF as the defense of the week, just like I did with BYU, just to keep picking who's playing WVU to kind of put a hex on them a little bit. But I gotta go with my brain instead of my heart on this one. I'm gonna take Texas Tech as my defense of the week. I know they're on the road, Arizona State, tough spot, but I'm not liking what I'm hearing about Sam Leavitt, albeit still very early in this week. I just think Arizona State's dealing with some very unfortunate injuries on that offense. Texas Tech's defense has been killed. Jed, another fun advanced stat for you: stop rate. Okay, so just quite simply, how often your defense gets off the field, forces a punt, forces a turnover on downs. How often your defense gets off the field. Texas Tech is number 1 in all of college football right now, like 86 or 87, 88% of the time their defense gets a stop. Give me the Red Raiders there to frustrate the heck out of the Sun Devils in their own building.
I tell you what, if Sam Leavitt doesn't play, I'm all over what you just said. But if Sam Leavitt does play, I would almost discard at least part of what you said. I just think that this game sets up. It's so Arizona State on brand.
Very much so.
Being counted out, backed into a corner. But without Sam Leavitt, I don't think it can be done. I think they'll struggle offensively. So if he doesn't go, and I'll say this: well, this isn't a Texas Tech podcast, but they're playing great football, and we'll talk about this more as things go on throughout the Big 12. You know where they're not very good, and they have time to work out the kinks. They struggle in the red zone offensively.
Ooh, okay.
You're going to lose big games against good teams if that continues. So they got plenty of time to work it out, but we'll see. Yep, I think we kind of covered that at large at the top of the show.
Yes, we did, and I'm with you. I think they should be ranked in the top 5, but we've got plenty more time to talk about Texas Tech when we get to around Thanksgiving to the end of November. But that will do it for this UCF preview. Reminder, barbecuing with the beer truck episode already out this week. It's Owen's famous coleslaw this week as we go back to a side dish once again. Gotta love it. Gotta have some slaw with your pulled pork, your brisket, your ribs, all that good stuff. So make sure you're checking out Owen's famous slaw recipe. And then, of course, we will tee up the college football weekend, as we always like to do, with Phil Steele on Friday. So plenty out there this week and plenty more to come, as always, as we get ready here for the back half of the Mountaineer football season. But that will do it for us for this episode of ITG. For the producer, co-host, Mr. Do-It-All, Schuyler Callihan, the barbecue and beer truck, sharp-dressed man, Owen Schmitt, and, of course, the signal caller, Jed Drenning. I am Wes Uhler. The one thing we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. You've been In the Gun.
ITG.
The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.